Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Secrets of Fail series, where we're talking about all of our failures in business, the things we hate to talk about on our Facebook and LinkedIn timelines. But with me on the line is Neela Hummel, the CEO of Abacus Wealth. Neela, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Excited to be here.
So, Neela, why don't you kick us off and give us the elevator pitch about Abacus Wealth?
So at Abacus, we plan to expand what's possible with money. I make the joke that we are some financial planning hippies with a conscience. So we believe that you can identify and achieve your financial goals and leave the world a little bit better on your way.
Cool. So what is the problem that you would solve, and who are you solving it for typically? Is it sort of, high net worth individuals, people at all life stages?
It's a great question. So typically wealth management focuses on the ultra wealthy. We focus on a wide variety of people because most people are actually precluded from getting really great financial access. So we serve clients on the lower spectrum with a no asset minimum, just a financial planning minimum, all the way up to the ultra wealthy, in the hundreds of millions range. And so we really focus on individuals and families, helping them identify their financial goals, put the plan in place for them to get there, and then help them along the way.
Such an important problem that you're solving. It's really, really cool to have you here. So anyway, let's get on to the story of fail. So what is your story of fail for our audience around the world today, Neela?
Oh, just so many stories. So if I had to pick my most recent favorite one, about 18 months ago, our firm went through what could be called as a crisis. And this is really the moment of fail that I would like to talk about. Essentially, we had a number of our partners who had different ideas of where the firm would actually go, really different desire, different vision. And so it was decided that a couple of partners would go start their own firm. And what happened is we ended up losing some more people than we actually wanted to lose. We lost some really great team members and ended up losing just about a quarter of our business. So we've been on this pretty much meteoric rise, right? In financial services, we've been in business for over 20 years. And it was almost like the party kind of stopped. It was done in a very intentional way, but that's a huge shift for a firm, right? Once you're established, you've got everything based around working with a particular size. And it was a big change really quickly. That coupled with the fact that the market happened to just immediately fall off a cliff right after that happened. And in financial services, your revenue is very tied to what the markets are also doing. So we basically lost some key players. We lost a chunk of our business, and then the market fell off a cliff. And so we were kind of at this moment of, okay, well, what's next? Mm-hmm. It was interesting for me because I had become, I'm actually co-CEO of Abacus. So my better half, it was our former chief marketing officer. And we took the CEO role about 36 hours before all of this started to go down. So perfect timing in traditional, Murphy's Law fashion. But for us, it was almost like because of the attrition that we experienced during that period, she and I almost failed before we even got started. And so we were kind of looking up against, this huge, enormous hill of what is going to be the future of this firm.
Mm-hmm. So what did that experience teach you?
So now I'm so happy it's 2023. 2022 was a bit of a doozy. The biggest piece was that the reason for the split are actually what I think has made our firm that much stronger. And it really comes down to vision, that as an executive and as somebody who is leading a business, it is so clear that you are unabashed in what your vision is and that you do not compromise on that vision. Because the more you compromise on that vision, the more you become the buffet, right? And I'm not going to knock buffets, but you want to be so targeted in the kind of people that you want to attract, both from a client standpoint and from an employee standpoint. So be so clear on your vision, because it might be a little bit messy, but you will pay the price one way or the other if you try and dilute your brand.
Neela, what have you learned about the role of a vision changing over time? Because I've found like any company that scales to any kind of what anyone might call as a successful level of revenue or headcount or whatever the case is, it's very rare to meet a co-CEO or a CEO or a CMO, anybody is steering the ship in any way, shape, or form, to have not had their vision change because of markets moving, because of pandemics, because of different priorities, different operating models, different products and services. It's almost like the vision has to be flexible enough to change so that you can actually reach a level of success, quote unquote, that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And I think you want to have some flexibility so that you can continuously make it better, so that you're responding to market conditions. The biggest thing is that if you're starting to compromise who you are and maybe the things that really attract people to you in the first place, that's kind of a different calculus, right? So I think, in having a vision, you want it to be written in, I don't want to say pencil, but maybe dark pencil. You want it to be directionally in according to kind of your core values and not shifting that piece of it. Pivoting makes sense. Doing a 180 can work, but if you're really changing your total demographic, you're looking for a total rebrand, right?
Did you guys rebrand also, or did you?
We didn't really rebrand. We basically doubled down on who we always were and what we always called secret Abacus, right? It was all this cool stuff that we felt like we were doing behind the scenes that we weren't as outward facing with it. And so we really started talking about it more, right? We doubled down in terms of how you're investing really can line up with making the world a better place, right? By reducing the amount of fossil fuel emissions and, reducing civilian firearms, different areas where you can hit the financial returns that you need to hit without really sacrificing your financial goals. And so then we talked more about what we were doing behind the scenes, creating a clear path to partnership, a strong employee value proposition, large investments in DEI and pro bono, and some of the things that don't get a lot of attention, particularly in financial services.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's go back in time.
All right.
So if you could go back in time, Neela, what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I think I would probably be a little bit more patient with myself in recognizing that true change takes time, right? And that any given day, you want to put everything you can. But when you're steering a large firm, change doesn't happen overnight, right? I had 65 employees, $3 billion in assets under management. It's a kind of a big shift to move. And so just being patient in how long change can take. I'd say the second thing, something that I think we did a pretty good job of, but I think you could always do more of, is listening to your teammates. Listen, and then listen some more, because those are the people that are going to tell you what's going on and what their biggest concerns are. So I think patience and you can never have enough empathy and humility to connect with your whole team.
I empathize with you because I'm also very impatient. Like, I want it done now.
Right.
Like, I'm 44. Yeah. I'm not even like a instant gratification type person. You know what I mean? Like, I just like to build things fast and change things. Like, and I get that, like we were, my previous company were like 55 people, and to get that thing to change was also like a total headache. And I guess it's this idea of like, it takes 15 years to become an overnight success. Right. But 15 years is a long time to wait to become, quote, successful, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really hard for those people, you and I, who have a strong action bias, right? Where it's like, okay, I can move ahead. I want to get this done. I want to get this done. You want to check things off your list and feel like you can make a ton of progress. And so how do you channel that in a way that isn't as disruptive for everybody around you? Because change management is a real thing, right? You want to be careful about moving so fast that you then leave some people behind.
The other thing is, people don't actually want to change. They like to talk about change, but in reality, they're just like, I mean, if everybody loved change, we'd all have six packs.
Right.
But we
Absolutely.
don't.
Right. Right.
This
That
change
requires
sucks.
a lot of work to do that over and over.
Yeah. Oh, that's classic. Cool.
Yeah.
So, what's your advice to other CEOs, entrepreneurs out there in terms of, the relationship to failure or the process of failing to reach a level of success?
So one of the pieces that we haven't really hit on, but I think was really critical to getting to the point where we are, because at this point, I feel like our firm is set up and we are so poised for success. We are doing really, really phenomenally. But I think one of the reasons that I'm still standing here is that my co-CEO and I decided to apply for this job together, right? That is a very atypical model, particularly in financial services, this idea of sharing leadership. When we decided to make that move, everybody tried to talk about us out of it. Oh, it'll never work. You can't share power. Nobody's ever done it before. Oh my God, who do you think you are? But the kind of collaboration that she and I were able to do and the ability to divide and conquer in a time of what felt like actual crisis was unbelievable and really made it possible, I think, for us to do what we were able to do. So I think trusting your gut and knowing that, you might be kind of seeing or feeling something that other people aren't necessarily going to get. I think the other piece is there are a lot of things that are outside your control. And I think the further you go in your career and the more people you're kind of in charge of, the more responsibility you have, arguably the less you actually have in your realm of control. And so this actually speaks to the earlier point about patience of, okay, there's some things that just are going to unfurl whether you like it or not. And so what do you do with those opportunities versus trying to control every single possible thing because you can't?
Oh my gosh, such an important thing. The amount of anxiety I've created for myself unnecessarily so by trying to focus on outcomes is next level.
It's
Like
so hard.
Dude, so check here. So see this thing here? I have this green removed M&Ms have come out of my jar somehow.
Uh-huh.
but I'm not going to get all like non-green ones so they don't get chroma keyed out automatically. But I have that thing because, it's just inputs. Like it reminds me like how many Smarties have you put in the jar today? If you just put one, that's great. You don't need to put 500. 500, it's better. But if you can do one, that's fine. But don't worry about who's going to eat the Smarties or the M&Ms.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits, but one of the examples that they use is 1 to the 365th power is just 1, but 1.01 to the power of 365 is like 37.8. That identifies or really underlines the idea that kind of small shifts and small habit changes can yield really large results.
Yeah, it's nuts. In the context, I'm interested to double click on what you said there around, your kind of co-CEO, former CEO, it's interesting. Because there's a dynamic there. It's like a husband and wife or sort of thing. Like my wife worked with me in my business previously, and we had to learn how to deal with failure as a married couple. You know what I'm saying? And I actually think that like the institution of business, if you have co-CEO, like I know like quite a few, I've not a lot, put it that way, it's rare, but dealing with this process of, hey, we have this vision, we're trying to execute towards this new vision, and you failing, but then it's both really sitting on both of you. Do you know what I mean? Because you co-CEO. So what have you learned about failing as a team when you're really at the top of this ship, when you're co-captains of this ship?
I think it all comes down to communicate, right? I think part of the reason that we decided to do it was, the responsibilities of a CEO have now, it seems like they've grown and evolved, right, over the last several decades. And you're expected to know all of these different things. It's also, you see a lot more CEOs getting extremely burnt out, right? Because they're kind of working with the whole chessboard and they don't really have anybody who knows all the same information that they do. And so this idea of if you do have somebody who has all that kind of information that you do, think about the better quality decisions that you're actually able to make. Because we disagree all the time, but we communicate in a really effective way. And from a vision standpoint, we're completely aligned. And I think, any good leader owns all the responsibility for failure. right? Period, bar none. You pass off credit for all the successes and you own the responsibility for failures. That is leadership.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I had Lev Babin on the show. He wrote the book Extreme Ownership with Jocko Willink. And he was, I asked him about, listen, when you go, well, in the context of leadership in the Navy SEALs, like, how does it work? I mean, if you're on the ground and, there's grenades going off and snipers and stuff, like, how does this actually, how does leadership then work? when people's lives are at stake rather. And he said to me that the role of a leader is not it's a lot to do with mindset, but it's never the Navy SEALs team working for him. Like, he's not saying, do this, do this, do this. Like, of course, there's a component to that. That's what a leader is. But it's not, in other words, another way of re-articulating that, it's they work with him and he's there to provide a service to them. It's not them providing a service to him so that he looks good on the ground. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. It's that idea of servant leadership, of it ultimately being in a high level position. It's just a lot of responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think about who my clients are, right? I'm not a primary wealth advisor anymore. My primary clients are now my employees, right? And making sure that I can take really great care of them so that they can deliver the absolute best financial advice to our, hundreds of clients. But ultimately, it's really easy to sit back and take credit, but that's not the way to lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it takes humility to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like leadership is, it's funny saying this, but it's like not really something you talk about. If you're the one who's out there saying like, I'm a great leader wouldn't say that.
let me tweet that.
Right?
let me tell the world that I'm amazing in every way. Yeah. God, imagine we lived like that. Well, some of us do, unfortunately.
Right. But it's, anyway. I think the chest beating of, idea of leadership, I think is gone or done.
Yeah, absolutely. Neela, thanks for being on the Secrets of Fail series. Very interesting what you guys are doing, the dynamic with you two at the top also. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for shining a light on the fact that failure is a necessity and it's okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt.
Anytime. Stick around, Neela. Ciao.
All right.